your narrator isn't gonna like try, not gonna cause any trouble or like be. But look, I mean, you had me switch over the TV like to. It's just this character Ron Paul's talking. Okay, but here's the thing, and he is a character. I mean, he's a charlatan. He campaigns on things like end the Fed. By what means and for what purpose, and like what's he talking about? Young people like think that's logical. But hold on a second. I thought one reason that you might have done it is because I'm saying they were showing a clip of him from the primary where he said, I mean, he was saying something about, he felt that, he was talking about, he was talking about something that's serious. I mean, this is not, I don't put this, he's not a character for saying this. I was talking about he felt like we shouldn't be in Iraq, and I thought, in Iraq. So I thought, given what your narrator thinks of Ron Paul and he's a libertarian. We've seen how well that's worked. American libertarianism, it's not. I mean, he has to define it first. But here's the thing. But I thought, oh wait, we didn't load the video we made about the little known fact about about American military action, and like a kind of like fairy tale way that like people perceive what our role is and what's like behind the such things or potentially behind it when they don't know the reason for something. And we talked about Britain. The theme has been like on like Britain as sort of like, well, first our main economic opponent, but also the control they have over the control they have with regard to the policies we make economically. Okay, and I thought, like you're trying to remind me, like, hey, you never loaded the video, that you made about that. Like, why don't we load that? I thought, but I thought, well, it's not that good a video. Wait, people see this. I mean, you want to be like, at least like take into consideration like people that might like this was something like unfamiliar or whatever. But I'm saying I don't want to hear him talk anymore about other things. I mean, I'm saying, and it is in the Fed. He's got like young people who like off on a thing about the Federal Reserve. He says he's a libertarian, but doesn't define it. They incarnate them unless it's a local thing, which is like things. I have friends involved in like sort of local things about that. But no. For national office, like American libertarianism is like as far as it relates to like macro things or whatever. A lot of people Chomsky says, and like it is sort of what the neoliberal project looks like. Would be like what people in the '60s, like myself, the ones who went into the sort of like libertarian thing. Chomsky said, if you could ever get a society to function on those economic principles without completely self-destructing, it would be a world so filled with hatred on all sides, and particularly with class hatred, that you would just kill yourself. You wouldn't want to live in that. He said that prior to the ramp up of the neoliberal project. But we don't think he means like libertarianism, like local like stuff that like that's different. Regulations on how one lives their life and stuff. But I mean like things like that, but local. But here's the thing, like, but as far as like us not saying loading that video, what it said is like way earlier, like we talked about the fact that like that there's this idea, and like it's furthered by countries, by leaders in countries who like know what's popular and like how to get elected by making people perceive that America like goes it alone all the time. It was some kind of rogue state that like, and people who live in reality have always said, well, when we do a military action, the decision-making process, the Western power alliance is doing that. That's why everyone sends troops. But the leaders, like to say, well, like America is the only country that can project its military power overseas. Therefore, we would be asked to like lead such things. But all leaders say, like, I don't know, America's just like out of control. When in reality, we're as Obama said, well, we've underwritten global security without being thanked by the other Western countries for a long time. But here's the thing. What people don't know, as far as like the loss of economic sovereignty and the fact that like we live under a threat of capital flight from the banks based in places like Britain and Royal Bank of Scotland, which since 1971 are in like strategic alliance with each other, and that we can't actually, one reason we can't like build infrastructure or even do things to really stimulate the economy is because we'd be punished with flight of capital from overseas banks. But one thing that's not mentioned is that if the Western countries, or the see if as this sort of like if forces inside like Britain want the Western power lines to go to and do a military action in any country, and they were to ask America to, say, well, we want you're the only country that can project its military power overseas. We want you to take the lead in going to, say, this country and that country, or we're going to go to the Middle East and this and that. If we didn't want to, like if the leadership here said no, like we prefer this time with regard to this military action, let's say Britain's requesting on behalf of the Western power alliance, oh, we want to stay isolationist on this issue, whatever. We know that's going on, but that's the British Empire did what it did overseas, and now there's all kinds of things happening. But no, we'd like to remain isolationist on this thing. Britain will have to do it. Well, no, Britain can't do it. They would need us. But if Britain said we want you to go invade a country, like we want you to, like, we don't know what goes on behind closed doors when world leaders meet. If they said no, look, we're going to Iraq and you have to do this, we wouldn't be able to say no, because they can punish us by selling off the currency. The amount of our currency, the banking network, this inter-alpha banking network that's largely like made up of British banks and things like that, would, if they told us, like if they told the American leadership, like, look, we want to go, we believe it's in the interest of the Western power alliance to invade Iraq, if they were the ones that said that, we would have no choice. They would have no choice, particularly with something like that. If we said no, we'd like to remain isolationist, they'd start selling off the currency. So we don't really know but it's definitely not that America goes it alone. But as far as what leadership behind closed doors makes decisions like that, we wouldn't have a choice if Britain called the shots, or if they do or they don't or whatever. You really don't know. Those things are made at like high levels that are not, social scientists think you can know everything. No, we don't really know who's calling for that. Not really. But that leadership always tells their people that America just does these things on their own. But we could assume, okay, it is the American leadership that decides on these military actions. But if we wanted to stay isolationist, we couldn't. We couldn't. Britain would call the shots, because if we wanted to be an isolationist country at any point, at least in my lifetime, that would not be an option, because so much of they'll just start selling off our currency. So it does look at, I do assume that do assume that America, the leadership wanted to go to, say, Iraq. But if we didn't, we wouldn't have a choice. We're under threat of capital flight. That means domestic economic things are dictated by what Chomsky calls a virtual senate of lenders and investors. But also, it's true with military things. We couldn't stay isolationist if we wanted to. That's what the video is about. But I'm really starting to get broken down into the sort of psychological aspect of your thing, and I don't really have anything to lose, but I also don't really know who's watching or what we should do or anything like that. But that was the only cue I took, because you wanted that video loaded. I don't want to hear him with his end the Fed crap. Why doesn't he talk about something like the establishment of a national bank, and that the American government should reassert its sovereign right to print its own debt-free currency parallel to the other currency, and the fact that our private central bank can do a few things to stimulate the economy when there's a problem. We're not getting rid of the privately owned central bank, but if he wanted to talk about such issues like a grown-up, he could campaign instead of end the Fed, launch a national bank, and America's reasserted sovereign right to print a parallel currency like Abraham Lincoln did with the greenback, which allowed us to industrialize. That would be a grown-up thing. And we don't know what the word libertarian means. Words you know, words that don't have a definition when someone speaks them, are just inaudible sounds. I don't know, but I'm having a lot of stress in your thing. It was really cool, but something really cool happened this evening. But it's just like it's stressful in your thing and not knowing a lot of things. I apologize.